Hey, it's Dr. Manny. Welcome to Asylum. I guess it's been a while. I can't even remember when the last time was I did a Facebook Live. Well, here I am. The topic is about getting stuck. It's a particularly meaningful topic to me because, hey, Michael, thanks for joining. It's a particularly meaningful topic to me because I think I feel as if I've based a lot of my identity around getting out of being stuck. Um, One of the misconceptions is that if someone appears to be successful doing the things that other people aspire to do, whether it's working for software startups, which I've been fortunate enough to do, launching some companies, stuff that has gotten recognized and been visible, becoming a doctor, going to Harvard, all the stuff that per perception, these are things that, oh, you've had these successes, you've had these wins. But hey, Maud, thanks for dropping by. Hey, Trish, welcome to Asylum. Uh, but the reality about getting stuck is that all of us go through it. And what's most important about it is how you handle it in the moment. Um, so for me, again, a lot of my identity, I found that a lot of times in life, I'll be holding myself back from my next level of success, essentially keeping myself small because at least, hey Tamara, thanks for dropping by. Welcome to Asylum. So, because at least if I was staying small, then if I had a failure, then it would be on a smaller scale. But that serves no one because in the end, if you're here to follow a purpose to do a specific task, if you're here with a belief in destiny, which I am, then there's something you're here to do, and you got to get up off your ass and do it, right? um, so the whole concept of getting stuck became a bit of an obsession for me. Um, I think the first really stuck time that I can remember in my life was when I first got to Harvard. Like within a couple weeks on campus, I can't remember if it was within 2 or 3 weeks, but we had this super hard ego destroying statistics test that we all had to take. See, it was back in 1991, and it was still a little bit about it and my feelings about it. So it definitely had an impact. Now, this was, I think, my second time away from home because away from home for real, like long term, out competing in an environment because this was Harvard. And here I was I had already jumped into the pre med program. I had met my competition because, as pre med, we were super competitive. Everything's about competition. I had met my competition and I was stepping into my new reality. And the biggest thing was that my identity up until then had been pretty bound in um, buying into this genius myth that I was like a light years smarter than people, and this assumption that when they said challenging, that life would be challenging, and that what I was pursuing at Harvard was going to be challenging, was that it was going to be like every other challenge, where it would be hard, but then my brain would magically be like, "Oh, there's the answer! Boom! Wow! Epiphany!" Didn't work like that. When I got there, one of the first things that reality hit me with was, okay, so I think each year Harvard lets in 1,604 people. So here I was surrounded by 1,604 people who were like mind-blowingly gifted in their specific lanes. Um, and again, this statistics test showed up and knocked a bunch of us back. Then we had another class called expository writing, where that was a tearjerker because basically all of us who had these egos from having been so unique and gifted in our prior environments, we got there and we took this test. We were doing these writing assignments, and yeah, it's Harvard. It's on a curve. Somebody has to get a D, and a lot of folks, we weren't really fantastic with feedback because I in particular, speaking of going, anchoring into the getting stuck, most of my life, when I got stuck on something, I'll get salty, get in my feelings, disappear for a bit, lock myself away, and come back, do something magical, and recover the ego. That wasn't what was happening here. Uh, I was stuck. I was scared. I was away from home. All the people were smart, so I knew they were about to do some magic too. Pre-med tests were on a curve. And so it froze up. I know now, since I studied psychiatry and lots of psychology, that it was working memory threat, identity threat. Just turns out I had what's called a fixed mindset, which is one of the first aspects of getting stuck. Is if you believe you have a fixed mindset, it's pretty much a mindset of you have a certain amount of intelligence. The universe gave it to you. You're going to get as far as you can on that. If you're brilliant right up until you meet the part of reality where you've hit your limit. Uh, Whereas the growth mindset is one in which, and this is Carol Dweck's work if you want to dig into the data and the science behind it, but with a growth mindset, every challenge is an opportunity to grow because you're aware that basically by staying calm and not identifying with the stuckness, it's an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to expand, opportunity to develop an appreciation for other people's skills and gifts. And really, beyond all that, it becomes an opportunity to realize your own strengths, your own gifts, your weaknesses, where you fit in the bigger scheme of things, and what your longer term contribution to the universe, to the planet, to society, to humanity is going to be. So all that happens when you're stuck if you don't spiral out. So one of the first things and by spiral out, I mean over-identify with the stuck label. If you decide you're stuck and you spiral out, you go into, usually you go into, what I teach my clients is what's called the drama triangle, a victim, villain, or hero. You go into these three behavior patterns that are these loops where it no longer becomes about figuring out why you're stuck and doing something about it. It becomes about saving face so that the people around you either don't see that you're stuck and don't see the limitations that you have. So instead of going with an authentic, vulnerable approach that you can use in a trusted tribe among people with higher self-esteem who are on the same journey as you, you go into a withdrawal, sort of isolation, sort of pretending you know, pretending you don't have any questions, pretending you don't need help, pretending you're not overwhelmed, pretending you don't feel bad. Pretending takes cognitive energy, and it's a large part of why you're stuck because, again, if you get caught in either stereotype threat, identity threat, gender related threat, social class related threat, intelligence related threat, all these different things cause your working memory, which is your consciousness, to lock down. So you go into fight, flight, freeze, faint mode. Fight, flight, freeze, faint. None of those is productive. None of those is going to get you unstuck. A couple of them are like assuming you're dead, so you drop. One is assuming you're about to be dead or eaten, so you take off and run. Another one is assuming that you're under threat and you need to destroy the threat because you believe you have a chance, and so you take the swing to your best of your ability. Those are all stuck as well because in the end, you're not unstuck until you're making progress in the direction of your desired outcome. And so I want to pause there and kind of jump across, not really across topics, but just jump into a slightly different frame of looking at the stuckness. Being stuck is a feeling, which essentially means that you could be in the midst of all your best successes. Everything is going fantastic, and you wake up in the morning, and when it's time to pull up your vision, it doesn't inspire you. You feel stuck. It's very important to move from identifying with the stuck, using language like I am stuck, to I feel stuck. It's the same as we often recommend when we're coaching folks to watch your I am statements, because every I am statement you make is an affirmation. It could be an affirmation of your aspirational identity, what you want to be, what you believe you can accomplish, but you may have forgotten in the moment of stuckness, or it could be an affirmation of your stuckness. I am stuck. I am angry. I'm disappointed. I'm overwhelmed. You own that now. And the thing about when you, again, this is working memory. We're managing your conscious energy. We're managing the way you're flowing your energy, the story you're telling yourself, and the negative self-talk. So when you're saying I am stuck, I am stuck, I am stuck, I am stuck, you guys know I'm into hypnosis, so this is auto-suggestion. This is literally you're telling yourself, be stuck. So the importance of that is to realize that it's a feeling, it's an emotional state. The stuckness is a state. It's where you are in this moment. That's why it's so powerful to return to the present. You hear all these people talk about the importance of being present. When you're present, your working memory, your conscious mind, the experience, the story you're telling yourself in that moment with the self-talk, um, when you're in the present, it's not in the past, so you're not doing the criticism, you're not doing the negative self-talk where you're judging yourself, which keeps you stuck in the moment. Because guess what? If you're talking like crap about work you've done in the past, your brain automatically infers that going forward, anything you're doing now, you're going to talk like crap about it as well. So you put in a half-assed effort, and then you're like, oh, you resign to being stuck. Um, Hey, Marjolaine. Hey, Victoria. Hey, Simon. Hey, Kelly. Hey, Patricia. Who else is here? Hey, Catherine. Hey, Josie. Hey, Michelle. Hey, Nancy. Hey, Candy. Hey, Macio. Hey, Michelle. Welcome to Asylum, everyone. I only see that there's 5 people on here, and I wasn't scrolling. So, hey, April. Welcome to Asylum. Hey, Dr. Zarina. Welcome to Asylum. Did I get everybody? I hope so. Okay. So, returning to the stuckness concept. So I discussed earlier, you're looking at fixed mindset versus growth mindset, but that's not all of it. Once you do believe, when you have a growth mindset, it means you believe you can change. Your self-esteem is not bound to your identity. And as such, instead of focusing on the goal and how you're going to feel at the end of the goal and feeling disempowered in the moment, you're actually able to step out. You're able to disidentify with the stuckness and know that it's part of your process, and then you're able to trust the process. Hey, Doug, welcome to Asylum. So you're able to trust the process. Okay. Now, all that being said, that shift in mindset, it just means that you believe. Your mindset is a set of beliefs that are most accessible to you in any moment, in any event. I'll talk more about what ideas come to mind in any given moment, how they affect your thought process in a bit, if I don't forget. But the bright side is I'll be doing several more of these. So these are still ideas that I'm processing. I haven't put them in exact order yet, but what I've found, and as you guys know, I used to do like an hour a day last year. I've moved to a different model. This is an aside. I'll be back to the topic, to the point in a minute, but I've moved to a different model. I was getting to the point where I was frustrated with words and metaphor. I was stuck. And so I was like, how else can I express these things that I'm feeling, that I'm sure other people are feeling as well, and to bring them around to these states and to help them get out of those states. And as you guys know, I've done years of digging into mindfulness meditation. I started meditating lazily during my psychiatry residency because I heard about it, but I was super busy, so I was doing it half-assed. When I left my psychiatry residency and joined some startups, my initial startup was too crunch-like. I mean, we were going. We were crunching out software around the clock, so there wasn't much namaste happening there, and I kind of lost the habit. But where was I? Okay, so going back to when you get stuck, it usually involves something going on in your mind, something in your thought. You're either thinking about the problem wrong, you're thinking about the problem, you're hopping out of fear. Those are the main ones. Or you're not thinking about the problem enough and you're jumping into action, and possibly you're being triggered by the environment, these maladaptive patterns of behaviors. Often they're behaviors around relationships, and I mentioned the drama triangle earlier. If you guys have watched some of my old videos, actually I think even on YouTube you might be able to find some of my drama triangle conversations. Drama triangle, how you're knocked into subconscious processing, how you get knocked out of your personality into shadow functioning. There's extensive videos on that. I've got like hundreds of hours of videos on YouTube, and probably at least 100 hours of videos and audio on Facebook if you actually go through my timeline and check the video links and stuff, because it's been years. So I say all this to say that I was stuck as far as writing, despite the fact that at one point I was pouring out a couple thousand words a day and I was rolling. I got to the point where like I would write and it had that feeling where it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't feeling like the writing meant anything. I would write something and blah, whatever. So I shifted over to looking at different ways of expressing myself. I adopted a GarageBand mindset. So I moved to writing music, specifically because I was in a meditation phase. I moved to writing music that is better for bringing me into mindful state. Because again, I was saying earlier, I started doing mindfulness meditation. That was challenging for me. Like sitting in silence, the way my brain works. Most of those conversations are not conversations I want to have now. My negative self-talk is particularly toxic and cruel because having studied psychiatry, I could very rationally deconstruct my own sanity if you leave me alone by myself. So with that in mind, I was stuck in two ways. One, I wasn't getting much joy out of writing, and I literally wrote a book about beating writer's block that we haven't pushed yet a few years ago. It's still sitting. But so I came to the realization that my stuckness around the writing had to do with just my inner critic, my negative self-talk, where not only was I not able to, in any given moment, create more, I was finding that every line I was writing was exhausting because as I thought the line, I would, before I even typed it, I was criticizing myself about how it didn't fit, it didn't sound right, blah, blah, blah. So I found that most of my creative energy was going into that channel. So I was stuck judging my words. And I was like, how am I going to get out of this? Usually when you're feeling stuck, what you want to do is find something that intrinsically motivates you and step to doing some of that. It's rest, it's recreation, it's an opportunity to actually use your circuits as they were meant to be, because your brain is a curiosity-driven machine. We're in a culture where a lot of that has been hijacked by marketing. Marketing hooks into your identity. It uses identity threat to get you to do things through a sense of inadequacy, a need for belonging, a need for approval by some imaginary third party. It may be that you project judgment that you imagine from your parents, from your training, from your church, from your friendship tribe of origin. As time passes and as you grow, you continue to project these judgments onto people. And the way you're able to do that so effectively and so quickly is you run these inner critic voices really, really, really fast. These inner critic voices actually run just as fast as your other thought process and actually take up more energy. Because think about it, if you write one line and it's kind of half thought out and it's a really, really early idea, so it doesn't have, it's not even really ready to defend itself yet. You're just trying to get it out to see how it sounds. It's still kind of in your unconscious, still abstract. It doesn't have that visceral hit that a really concrete sentence or description or really visceral articulation of an idea can have. And you start to try to put it out. And even as you're thinking it, your brain is already like, that's stupid. And you immediately, the negative self-talk ramps you right up to imagining that critical audience, whatever audience it was when you had your biggest embarrassment failure, you can easily go right back to that, especially if you've been through a lot of fear-based conditioning in your training. And medicine was all fear-based training, like from the very beginning in pre-med, it was like, look to your left, look to your right. Only one of the three of you will make it to med school. So they were doing mind games and bullshit like that the whole way through residency and everything. It was always identity threats as a mechanism of getting you to work, scarcity conditioning, blah, blah, blah. So more on that in a minute. But so you got to go back to when these initial stucknesses happened, because really that's where your fear is going to be. What you did in those situations and the outcome, depending on how big a catastrophe it was, and how embarrassing it was, how humiliated you felt, how far from your true self you felt, that's the degree of fear you'll probably carry to when you have hints of about to be stuck now. So one helpful exercise is if you're up for a deep breathing habit, is to take 5 minutes, sit somewhere, take an initial deep breath. As you take a deep breath, close your eyes and ask yourself, your unconscious mind works in questions, so ask yourself, when was the first time that I got humiliatingly stuck or embarrassingly stuck, depending on what your triggers are. If it was frustratingly stuck, if you didn't end up in embarrassment, you end up quitting or bailing out and running, and the embarrassment was later. If you gave a half-assed effort and you underperformed because it was easier to deal with the inevitable criticism that you imagined if you hadn't done your best. And so you didn't punch through, so you gave a half-assed performance. there were some emotions associated with that. And at first, they're pretty visceral, pretty painful because there's uh, a dystonic feeling when you know you could have done better. But what happens is in time, when it becomes a defense mechanism, over time, you kind of paper over that dystonic feeling, whether it's by ignoring the fact that you're no longer kind of giving your best, and as such, the feedback isn't as personally meaningful because it no longer is a true reflection of where you are and even who you are. Because you're always sitting there like, well, I could have done better, but whatever, I didn't even try. Yeah. Um, it's worth pointing out that I developed a version of this when I got to undergrad, because one of my coping mechanisms, because I wasn't super good with dealing with feedback again, that was a skill I had to learn way later. Unfortunately, we went through a lot just by not being able to actually hear the details of improvements specifically a person was providing me. So most feedback I would get in my feelings and just be salty. Throw out the baby with the bathwater, start all over, and hope that this version makes it. So I'll make sure I'm somewhere within my relative stream of consciousness, not at some odd rivulet. But so when I think back to those times, then I can look at when I developed my initial habits that I performed during stuckness. With me, I'm not a big fan of public humiliation. So that to me was something that initially I had a maladaptive withdrawal coping mechanisms, because I had a combination of perfectionism and a good bit of neuroticism, which basically is intolerance to uncertainty. It means if I don't know, I need to go know. You could well imagine that when we're dealing with something like psychiatry or even medicine, or even my other parallel career, software engineering, you can go down a rabbit hole for days looking for different ways people have done stuff and still not be unstuck. You feel like you're doing something, but really you're, as far as productivity, you're still stuck. So you want to go back to when you were initially stuck. And again, this is something that's more effectively done if you go to a quiet place, take a couple deep breaths, drop yourself into a parasympathetic state, which means that your negative self-talk is toned down a bit. Now, when you go into this quiet space, what tends to happen is you go asking yourself questions. You're not super going to enjoy some of the answers sometimes, because that negative self-talk, again, even innocuous ideas about nothing, if it feels as if you're going to reach beyond your persona, your negative self-talk, your inner critic jumps in to protect you, to defend you, by helping you imagine all these negative outcomes that are going to happen. But again, it's maladaptive. This is a rabbit hole we can go down much deeper. I intend to do more conversations about dysfunctional interactions, toxic people, just different places in which we get stuck, but don't realize we're stuck because we're working so freaking hard. We're putting in so much effort, whether it's a relationship where the other person doesn't want the outcome that you want, and as such, even their efforts are sabotaging, or whether it's just people who don't believe they'll be able to accomplish it, and as such, working on a team with you, they're not thinking the team is going to make it, or they're feeling as if they're going to be punted from the team, and as such, they're not putting forth the full effort. Sort of an outside version of what I was doing with my papers and group projects back at Harvard. Okay, so I want to leave that frame again because that's something digging too deeper. Second frame, when you're stuck, it's a feeling. When you want to think about this feeling empirically, the best work to go to, best models, is self-determination theory. Self-determination theory is one of the leading models of motivation, self-directed action, getting clear on your values, getting clear on your goals, it predicts how you interact in a lot of situations. The models have been expanded to work productivity, even intimate relationship dynamics have been broken down with the self-determination theory model. So there's a whole website if you want to geek out, go to SDT, self-determination theory. But one of the most important aspects of self-determination theory is the model of intrinsic motivation. Okay, so according to self-determination theory, you need three things to feel intrinsically motivated. a little sidebar. Intrinsic motivation is important because that's your fuel, that's your fire, that's your get up in the morning, have initiative, that's your sense of ambition, your sense of each thing being worth doing. Okay, so I'll give you another motivation formula if you want a simpler one in a second. But self-determination theory says there are three aspects to you being motivated by something intrinsically, as in no carrot, no stick, no someone outside threatening you, no someone outside who controls the reward, promising you a reward that isn't even necessarily, well, a lot of times the reward is more motivating than the task. But the importance of intrinsic motivation is that intrinsic motivation is what they call symbolic self-completion. These are the actions that, because you feel driven to do this thing, it's personally meaningful. You'll do it in private. When you're in quiet, your unconscious mind is in what's called in motivated cognition. Your unconscious mind runs most scripts that you create with your conscious mind. If you create it right, you can let it go and it can run effectively and lightly in your unconscious and just pop up when it needs to show up. Okay, intrinsic motivation, it's not just a conscious construct. It's not just about the behavior that you're showing, how you're acting, what you're doing that I can see in that moment. Hey Patrick, hey John. I'm reading Tamara's statement. I've never heard anyone explain so clearly the exact same things I've experienced. My brain works the same way. That's awesome. We're simpatico. Good. I feel less lonely in the universe. Thank you. Okay. So three aspects of intrinsic motivation are, let's see, agency, which is a sense that your choices matter. It's basically when you do something that you actually get relevant feedback about the thing. When you're like, okay, I moved my right hand and everyone noticed that it was my right hand. A lot of times you'll find yourself in situations where you're putting in hella effort, but you're putting what you value is different from the value system of the evaluator. Value system of the evaluator. Sorry, I love word combinations, so geek out a little bit, right? So what ends up happening is your effort ends up invisible. Your improvements end up invisible. You feel stuck in the past. You're like exhausted because you go away, you put in all this work, and then you present it, and you're getting torn a new one because none of the stuff you worked on seems to be appreciated, valued, or even perceived. So this is why agency is important. That's one. Competence is the second one. Are you good at it? Because for something to be intrinsically motivated, the way our brains work, and this is again something I'll dig into way deeper later on, the way your brain works is that it does something called mental contrasting, where you get clear on what you want, the desired outcome, you get clear on where you are now, and it's the fact that you hold those two things in mind at the same time that causes the cognitive dissonance, so that your unconscious mind, the huge engine that remembers everything you've done since you were sperm, it does the work of closing that gap because it doesn't like cognitive dissonance, so it resolves it. Now, that works on autopilot. Your job, when you're competent, you trust this machine because it has worked well for you. There's a certain, beyond competence, though, this is not in the original self-determination theory, you need confidence, because a lot of times you'll be perfectly competent, but your environment isn't sending around back the right feedback. Again, like back to the agency situation where your choices are not being reflected or expressed or don't feel meaningful because the problem set, the situation, the outside circumstances aren't reflecting your effort. So with competence, it's when you hit a certain level of competence, the act becomes self-energizing. You get all the compliments and you keep doing it. It becomes part of your identity because you're kind of known for it. When you come around, people are like, oh, he's going to do the thing he does, and it's going to be awesome. None of that happens if you suck. Okay. If you suck, then you got frustration. You should probably do some more private practice or practice around someone kinder, gentler, and more prone to what's called descriptive feedback as opposed to evaluative feedback. Descriptive feedback is good for self-esteem. Evaluative feedback hurts your feelings because evaluative feedback is you did that wrong. You're an idiot. I can't believe I'm wasting my time with you. Descriptive feedback is your angle is 20 degrees off. I think you need about 20 more pounds of PSI of pressure. I'm pulling these out of my butt. So, don't actually expect it to make full sense, right? So that's competence. So you have agency and competence. And the third one is relatedness. The relatedness aspect of intrinsic motivation speaks to whether the group that you're in is trying to do the same thing you're trying to do, so that when you do the work, it's meaningful. If okay, I'll give you an example. After my career in medicine, I returned to software engineering, which is something I've popped out of medicine 3 times. Third time was the charm. I finally got a company that worked, right? I've built some other companies before, but you can read about that in the book. In Thinking About Quitting Medicine. Quick plug for our book, Volume 1. Volume 2 is on the way in fall. Where was I? Okay, so when I hopped out into software, initially I joined a startup and they were building a virtual world sports themed game for kids. I loved it, where kids would jump in 3D worlds. This is when 3D worlds were new, and so we were still using the Flash engine, which was clunky, but the kids were loving it. It wasn't all immersive like stuff is now. So at that point, I was working with one company, virtual world company. It was great. It was fantastic. Stick with me. This will get to the point, I promise. I think I started earlier in the framing than I needed to, but I can fast forward. So that startup burned $4 million in 6 months and fired all of us. Those of you who read my story in the book know that by then I had left my residency and joined this company, this startup that was paid through the nose. So I bought big old house, all this other stuff, and suddenly this company went belly up. They burned the money so fast, and they had a team of us that had flown in from all around the world. They were like, peace out. I loved working at that company. It was like, the work was super challenging. We were using bleeding edge software. Sometimes you'd be writing code for hours and the screen would go red when you had a bug and whatever, but it was okay because I believed in what we were doing. Now, when that went belly up, I moved over and took a job as a lead software developer at WebMD. So if you use stuff like Ask the Expert or a lot of the symptom checkers in WebMD, I don't know, it's been a few years since I've been there, so new software guys might have replaced some of my code. You never know. But a lot of that back in the 2009, 2010, that was my code. So that felt somewhat meaningful. Same code. Now, keep in mind, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going in. I'm just as competent. I had just as much agency because I was a lead developer. So I was actually telling other developers, managing other developers. But every day when I would go home, it felt less rewarding, because I think with WebMD, it was a bigger company. It was medical based, so I still felt like I was using my medical degree. But I think it was, we all know what happens when you get to WebMD. You don't put in, I have a cough, and somewhere along the line you end up with like tuberculosis. There's that. So I was doing a lot of work with that software, and same stuff I was doing, but it didn't feel good. Turns out that if the organization you're with doesn't share your values, and as such, if the little piece that you're putting into the bigger machine isn't going into a machine that you believe in what the machine itself is doing, that sense of relatedness, that third aspect of intrinsic motivation, fails. Now, when you lose those 3 aspects, when one of those 3 is not present, then your performance lags. You might be able to grind it out and be surface productive, but in the end, you end up setting yourself up for emotional exhaustion, which is where you're pretending your emotions, you're pretending you want to be there, you're pretending you believe in the vision because you got to pay bills. And again, I did believe in the WebMD vision. I think I believe less in a pharmaceutical approach than a lot of medical related orgs. So that's my politics. I'll set that aside. Now, let's move to the third company. Eventually, I wanted to get back into building video games and stuff. And so I joined a company that was making lottery games. They were lottery-based games, but like mazes and stuff where you would go to the site on your mobile and play those. Those I love doing. It felt great. The work was super, super hard. Again, we were bleeding edge. Stuff was going out all around the world. Like millions of people were using their stuff or using my stuff. So there was a whole lot of pressure, but it felt good because like in the end, I believed in the vision of making these games that people play. Uh, I kind of was able to get over the part about it being, I was able to talk myself out of the part that this was gambling, and as such, a large part of our population was pretty compulsively gambling with the hopes of at some point winning a few $1,000,000. There's that. But I made my game super fun, so I knew they were getting at least fun out of their twisted retirement plan of winning the lottery. But so one of the things with startup world and working with these companies is just as fast as they'll build up a team, at some point they'll realize they don't need a bunch of rock stars with egos programming, and they'll outsource. So when that company outsourced this, I ended up going to another video game company that works strictly slot machines. So that's the point at which the third aspect of my intrinsic motivation, the relatedness, fell apart, because I remember sitting there thinking to myself the whole time they were explaining to me how high their payout was and how much joy we were giving the folks who were coming to these casinos. I mean, I had psychiatric training. I know what gambling addiction looks like, and you're not going to tell me it's not happening. So I lost a lot of motivation there, and productivity went pretty much downhill. I was with that company for about a year until I realized I had to go out again. A lot of times I get the itch and end up having to, I say having to, because it's so compulsive, end up starting my own company. I'm like, okay, well, let's go out and get our own clients. Sometimes it's worked well, sometimes it hasn't. So going back to the point, because again, these are just, I do these videos to get these thoughts out. So if you want the clearer, crisper versions, probably check some podcasts I've done or some interviews, or check my inspiration, Making Breathing Meaningful, is the course that I put the link on up here. That'll give you more concise, more directed content. If you're in that mailing list, you'll get my more linear, actionable content with actual steps. In inspiration, the Breathing Made Meaningful, I also included some of the music that I've been working on to help you with the meditation without silence. It moves more from the realm of mindfulness meditation, almost into the realm of transcendental meditation, which is simpler from what people are saying, because with the transcendental meditation, there's more, for me, there's more of an openness, more of a receptiveness. And now, the purpose of meditation, I just want to make sure I get this out. The purpose of meditation is to train your mind to be able to choose a thought. Well, first of all, to disidentify with a thought, which was what I was talking about earlier. This is the going from I am stuck to I feel stuck. Okay. Now, with the meditation, you become aware of your actual language use in the moment, instead of being bound to your thoughts and assuming that those thoughts are the outside permanent reality and getting stuck. You disidentify. You say, I am stuck. Don't like that. I feel stuck. Well, if I feel stuck, what can I do about it? Well, stuckness is a function of feeling like I've lost my sense of intrinsic motivation. All right. So there are three factors to intrinsic motivation. Again, there's agency, a feeling like that your choices matter. Competence, a feeling as if you're good at this. So when the feedback comes in, you can actually use it to improve. You could use it to adjust course. You can filter out some feedback as bullcrap. You're like, you don't know what you're talking about. I need your mute button right there. And then you can focus and get back to work. And then relatedness. It means that when you look up and you put in all this work, and I'll use a triggerish one. You don't want to write all the software and then look up and find out that you've written software for the plan. I mean, I wrote software that reached a lot of people. I wanted to make sure that the software I wrote, that I was going in every day and writing, was going towards something that I believed in. So those are the aspects of motivation. Now, I call the course Inspiration because the goal is to get you inspired, but the reality of it is that motivation isn't really what it's going to take to get you up off your ass. It's volition, it's willpower. It's a decision that there's something that you want badly enough that you could commit to doing it independently of the emotions. Okay. Now, the reason that's important is that if you want to be able to consistently get unstuck, you can't rely on something energetic and ephemeral like, is it ephemeral or mercurial? Well, you can't rely on something that goes up and down like your emotions. Your emotion system is designed based off your level of arousal to allocate a certain amount of energy to you in the moment. Your emotion system is an adaptable system. As such, it's learning. Where you are now, the reason you're stuck is that it's an opportunity to change some of the emotions you have around certain circumstances. You just have to decide which things are meaningful enough for you to choose through volition to get up off your ass. Okay. Now, I want to give one last thing about motivation. There's one more motivation formula that might be helpful. They say that motivation has two factors: feasibility times desirability. Now, when you hear these formulas, they're kind of just throwing together some stuff so that you can remember it. So don't like pull out your TI-81 calculator from back in the day to try to math this out. The point of the formula is for you to remember that motivation has two aspects, and you can watch these two things and decide which one is draining your motivation. Okay? Feasibility. Do I believe I can do it? Do I believe I have the resources? Do I know the people? Do I trust myself enough based on how hard and long ass a road this looks to continue to show up every day and do the piece that it needs regardless of my mood and how I feel? That's self-efficacy. That's self-confidence. That's clarity of goal. There's a whole lot of other aspects of setting intention, a lot of behavior management stuff that fits right into there. The other aspect is that's feasibility. The other aspect is desirability. How bad do you want it? So feasibility times desirability equals motivation. What's important to remember, though, is your brain is super fast at playing games on an unconscious level. And as such, if your feasibility starts to drop at a certain point where you realize that you're not going to be able to get it, you go into identity threat. You might blow it out of proportion, decide that it's going to be the death of you if you don't win. Humiliation is the worst thing ever. The stage is big. There's a lot of cameras, and it's going to be on TMZ. And as such, you want to go ahead and back off. But the way your brain saves face, this is ego narratives, ego defense, is you go into either rationalization, reaction formation, but there's a bunch of things your brain does where you're going to decrease that desirability. You're going to, as you see yourself not getting it, you basically, instead of choosing discouragement, you're going to go sour grapes with it. You're going to decide, sour grapes is the fox that jumped up and tried to get the grapes and couldn't, and then decided they were probably sour anyway. So that's what we tend to do. We subconsciously decrease the desirability so as to not be embarrassed about our negative self-talk running decreased sense of feasibility. So those are the two multipliers. Okay. So when you're looking at discouragement, the discouragement that leads to the learned helplessness that often you hear is depression, and becomes the range of stuckness over a while, becomes like sort of stuckness. I'm trying to remember. Sometimes my brain just stops mid-thought. So when you're looking at that formula, though, it's important to realize that your brain plays a lot of subconscious games as to how it interprets those two variables, unless you decide to yourself, okay, what's the feasibility? Okay, do I really want this? And deciding whether you really want something, there's daily work of clarifying your values. Every day you gotta get up. You have your morning routine, which shows you what you value because you review those things, you talk to people who enjoy those things, you have those interests. So you deliberately adjust the values, clarify your values, you set clear intentions so that the intentions are, SMART goals, measurable, etc., measurable, achievable, what else, time bound, all these different things so that you can tell what the stakes are in that moment. Are you stuck or are you delusional? If you really can't do it, then from jump, just the feasibility, you should have some sort of approach that you use. Actually, I do one-to-one coaching with my clients, and I teach them just basically how to bookend your day so that all day long, when something comes up, you're able to do a rapid decision based off of really accessible memories and intentions so you don't get caught up in the negative emotions that get you stuck. So that's the formula for the motivation. So I gave you two aspects of motivation. Motivation as an intrinsic motivation construct. So how the elements in the environment and sort of how you feel about them that might affect your sense of power in that moment, your motivation, your tendency to want to keep pushing forward. So that's agency, the feeling that what you're doing, like you're making your own choices and your choices actually are showing up out there. I think in some cases they might use the word autonomy instead of agency. So if you're seeing some studies that refer to it as autonomy, basically synonyms, choose your own adventure. Pick one meaning frame and go with it. Just the main point is that the stuff inside of you working and how you feel as if your choices are actually manifesting outside of you. Autonomy / agency. Competence, that's how good you are at your efficacy, your honest efficacy. Can you get results? And relatedness, which is meaning to the group and how much in alignment the values and beliefs of the group to which you're contributing, how much you're aligned to their value system and how much you believe in the good of the contribution of the work that you're a part of. Okay. So now, and then I provide you with that model, and then I provide you with the second model of motivation so you can do a quick inner check where it's desirability and feasibility. Okay. But despite having said both of those things, in the end, what ends up becoming the most important aspect of getting unstuck is going to be volition. Volition as in willpower. So a lot of times the thing that you get stuck on the most, you want to hit that early in the morning when your willpower is high, power is high. Preferably you want to, I think Brian Tracy uses the eat the frog metaphor. Go ahead and eat the frog first thing in the morning. That way you know you've eaten the frog and you can go on with the rest of your day. Essentially, if you put your highest priority thing first thing in the morning, in the morning we have what's called the cortisol awakening response where we spike and we're ready for the day. If you create a practice, and everything I do is around habits and practices, because when the shit hits the fan, your brain sizzles. Okay, so all your genius is gone. All that's left is what you wired into your memory. And ideally, you want to be able to lock into flow state, which is a state which has a lot of what's called hypofrontality, where you're not doing all that thinking. The negative self-talk is quiet. All you're doing is being present to the feedback and making sure that all the habits that you've practiced are working. So that being said, if you create a morning habit of being actually setting intentions, and I have my clients use what's called a compass: mind, body, being, and business. Mind, I use a simple breathing exercise where every morning you do 5 minutes of breathing. Body is daily. Mine happens to be morning yoga because I'm a big believer in, mainly because the data is there, believer in embodied and inactive cognition, which is basically you hold your emotions and you hold your memories in your organs, in electromagnetic fields and whatever. I won't go too deep into it because a lot of folks, once it goes off into what is really math, that sounds like spiritually math, their critical faculties kick in and they're like, oh, he's talking all that hand-holding stuff. But trust me, I'm a math lover. But so trying to remember what my point was. Either way, the beauty of this is that if my flow on this is too non-linear for you, get over it. Well, no, it pretty much means that that your cognitive style is not super aligned with mine. My main goal is to attract a tribe of folks who think like me, and as such, we can be synergistic and propel each other forward and propagate these ideas to the next level. But at the same time, because I don't want to be like a super exclusive, doesn't feel like the right word, but like an elitist about it. I also like to take the audio from these videos and audios that I do, transcribe it, and get an outline, a distillation of the most significant ideas. I like to build frameworks. I like to teach frameworks. I spent 10 years in the software industry before life in psychiatry and before medical school and stuff. Well, between med school. And so what I've learned along the way is that if you can give someone a conceptual framework that they can internalize, identify, and practice to the point of making it part of their muscle memory, they're much better off. So I tend to work a lot in frameworks. That's why I gave you guys the frameworks before. I say that to say that everything you hear me saying here, there are simple frameworks that hold these things together that in the moment you pull up in mind. Okay. So I think that covers that piece. I was thinking about doing some diving into how events in the environment trigger us to retrieve memories, but I'm gonna do that tomorrow because we're at 50 minutes now, and I told myself, y'all know, back in the day I was doing like hour-long lives. I'm over that. So my goal is to keep these to about 20 minutes each. If you have any questions, send me direct messages. Share this video if you find it useful and valuable. I appreciate you guys dropping by. What else? ManySaintVictorMD.com is my site. If you go there, there are three major things on there right now. There is Thinking About Quitting Medicine, which is the book that I brought. Dr. Nicole Swiner and I brought together 13 physicians for Volume 1 to discuss their life in medicine and the transitions they made, how they made medicine work for them, etc. I won't do a plug for that here. Second thing is, what's the second thing on my site? Oh, second thing on my site is my speaker sheet. If you get there, it's going to be basically telling you about speaking I do, what topics and what services I offer. And the third one is Asylum Awaits. Asylum is my project that I'm releasing to you guys in pieces. It's a combination of music, writing, and just different stepwise approaches that really work to get you unstuck, to get you the results, to get you inspired, to get you motivated, to get you creative, to get you feeling present and powerful. So the link is here. Sign up for the emails. It's a free 7-day series. It's called Inspiration, Making Breathing Meaningful. And it walks you through just what really happens in each cycle of your breath and how you can use that as a mechanism of getting unstuck, how you can use the breathing cycle as centering, empowering, just as the catalyst, because you're breathing all day. Once you start breathing right, and once you start breathing, I won't say right because that's a value judgment. Once you start breathing more effectively, increasingly effectively, and you start taking each breathing loop as a cycle and using it as a mechanism to stay purposeful, to stay connected to your why, to stay mindful, to stay calm, to stay at the right level of arousal, to filter out irrelevant information, to make sure that whatever thought is in your consciousness is true, not distorted, not slanted. Just once you start making each loop of your breathing that powerful, and you do it on a conscious level, what the power you get from that truly is that anything you take the time to deliberately sculpt and practice, your brain does on autopilot going forward. So the other thousands of breaths you take per day, something as simple as the 5 minutes that I'm asking you in this free course that I put together to do, something as simple as these 5 minutes of reflection, true, clear, honest reflection, creating that practice shifts everything and gives you the power to use what's called the single breath trigger, where in any given moment, when the stuff hits the fan, you take a single breath. Based off that single breath, your mind, because you've been practicing, knows to pull up, to return you to center, to equanimity. Next from there, because you practice, you're able to pull up what is most valuable to you in that moment. What that does is it pulls up intentions instead of expectations, and as such, you don't get emotionally overwhelmed by the situation. It lowers the stakes in the situation, gives you the clarity to see what it is you want specifically in that situation, what the actions are to do, what the actions to stop doing, what ideas are popping up into your mind that are leading to self-sabotage, keeping you stuck, keeping you afraid, keeping you from being honest with yourself, keeping you from truly hearing the feedback that other people are bringing in. So inspiration, the goal of this project is to get you truly unstuck, to get you doing the things that you're passionate about, to get you showing up fully, living to your potential, to get you creating something amazing. Impress me. Shit. All right, y'all. I'm gonna go. Thanks for joining me, Dr. Manny.